where I am is that I want to continue. I really have to get back to the soul, but all of these things are connected, so it's fine. But since I didn't do that, we have to talk more about Simcha. I'm not sure what we did last time here. I mean, I remember sort of, but I did a class last week in New York about it, and the other doesn't agree with me, so I have to see where you can help me get somewhere with this. Let me see, because I wanted to start all the way from the beginning. There's a lot of Torahs that I could say about the Rambam. We talked about L'chas Dayas, L'chas this, and L'chas that, and how we explain all these things. I don't know if I think I started this way last time, but I think we should start there again. So I'm just using my notes from last Shishi, so I hope that you'll be fine with that. So the first question is, and what I think my preface you already know, right? I want to explain, this is my like Lam Shishtikal Torah, I want to explain why the Rambam thinks that the point of the Torah is to be happy. That's what the Rambam thinks. He must think that because he read the ethics, and he interprets the whole Torah in light of the ethics, and very, very clearly.
The point, you mean like the ultimate goal, or it should
the definition of what it all is about. Yeah, the goal. By the way, the goal. Also the goal. Yeah, the goal and the way to get there, both of them, and what it's about. The Torah is about being happy. How do I know the Rambam thinks this? Well, I know it's from two ways, and I sort of am weird. It's weird to me. I think that this is very, very. I was looking for like an article to explain this. Maybe you people know, because I'm trying to get at this whole big revolution that happened where people stopped believing in eudaimonistic ethics, which was like the basic understanding of everyone, like it was in the water supply for 1,000 years or 2,000 years almost, and then at some point went away. And whether it's explicit or implicit, there's debates about this in the Torah, but it's clear that almost everyone that thought in this sense for a very long time, and then everyone stopped thinking that way. Right? This is the basic McIntyre story, of ethics being forgotten and whatever. Right? He read the book, but it's extremely true. You remember his mushal with the
scientist, the crash,
whatever the mushal. I don't remember. Yeah. That mushal is true. It's true for ethics. It's true for a whole bunch of things. I don't know. You got to read the first chapter of After Virtue. The first chapter of After Virtue is a mushal that is very, very foundational for everything that we're doing here. So you should read it. I should make copies of it and give it out here because it's a good mushal. Point is that this is a very basic point, right? The most general point. And I sent you the article of my friend Eli Huttenberg about this. No. You don't know this. This is like behind all of my drushas here, right? Maybe I could start here, where there's like certain basic foundational ways of thinking. I call them metaphysical, basic metaphysics, basic ethics, basic everything, Neoplatonism basically. That was accepted to varying degrees. People argued. There's a huge. Not saying that everyone said the same thing. We should not make this mistake. I'm not saying you can't be a secular person in that way. I'm not saying you can't be a Rusha. You could be everything. But there's like a basic language. Call it even language. There's a framework. There's a language. There's like a fabric of reality that everyone understands, that everyone works with, that makes sense to everyone. They say words that make sense. That at some point stopped making sense, and in various degrees and various ways. And everything that modern thought is about, modern Jewish thought is only a part of that, is all messed up because of this. I don't know, I'm not saying it's messed up, they might have good points, but you at least have to notice that there's these two things. If you don't notice them, this is the biggest jail, right? The biggest.
Let's say Jewish sources who still want to be like the old sources are trying to stuff in modern days ways of thinking into old.
Yeah, and not only that, they think that that's the only way to be rational or to make sense of things, right? This is the worst thing. Like Hasidus, I think, has this problem even. I'm always not sure about it, but I think this is a very serious question. Hasidus is a very weird example because they somehow don't know that the world changed, and somehow really very much know about this. In other words, because it's in the water supply. It's not like something that they read. They didn't read Yom or Kant or anything, but they sort of like automatically think in their patterns of thought. And when like a big example, this is not actually original Chassidus. This is a 20th century or 19th century reinterpretation of Chassidus.
Does that have to do with maybe the things that we use? Like it's maybe like a material story?
Maybe it has to do with what kind of water we drink. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the matzahs becoming flat, and the emunah is tuning in the matzahs, and since the matzahs became flat, all the emunah became flat. I'm serious about this. I have an article in my book on Pesach about this. Okay. I didn't know about this, about Mishim Matzah, but it's related. But by the way, it's a good example. It's a good example for what? For us being so sure that we're doing the tradition and we're doing something that was made up 20 years ago, last week, right? 200 years ago, about
what?
flat matzahs, Ashkenaz matzahs, or matzahs that you eat. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't eat those matzahs. Not only Moshe Rabbeinu, Baal Shem Tov didn't eat such matzahs. No, he didn't. Yeah, but a little after Baal Shem Tov. There were material reasons, like you said, there were economical reasons for it happening, and some chumrah reasons also. But nobody ate these matzahs for it. And if you read Rambam, he's not thinking about this. If you read Shulchan Aruch, he's not thinking about this. And we reading everything in as this. It's no shaykh. It's like
Hillel definitely didn't.
Gebrocht is not shaykh of these matzahs. Whatever. It's mefarish these things, and the Pascal didn't make them up. Point is.
I got me find flowers.
But that was not the shaila. That's not the shaila they're talking about. I think, if I remember correctly. Okay. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I remember that there's a practical reason. I don't remember. Okay, I'm not. Point is, this is just a mushal, but there's a metaphysical thing that happened like this. And my example is always, where people come and, like I said, in the 19th century Chassidus, I don't know about the 18th century Chassidus, but in the 19th and 20th century Chassidus especially, there's people that very explicitly say that what's with these mekabulim talking about Olam Esayanim, who cares about them? We should care about psychology, basically, about the soul.
When is this?
Who says this? Martin Buber says this. But it's he says it most explicitly. Rabbi Lanta says something like this, extreme Kantian, yeah. Rabbi Lanta says things like this, but Rabbi Lanta doesn't, and Rabbi Lanta is at least honest enough to say, I don't know what the Kabbalah wants for my life, so I'm going to ignore them. But the Chassidim, they go and they reinterpret Kabbalah and they make it into a mister or the Hanikra Derech Avodah. And I don't know if the original Chassidim are doing this, but at least some later Chassidim are explicitly doing this. And to me, that's like so messed up. Like, you should notice that something is wrong with you when you say this. Because Reb Chaim Vital actually did care about how many tiles there are in the Zaz floor. This thing that we say, that's just plumbing, that's exactly what they were after, the plumbing, the divine. Tzinorot is a language that they made up, not us, right? People laugh of it, that it's just plumbing. But that's, of course, it's a metaphor. I'm not getting into the point, but they cared about that thing, not about its application to like psychotherapy or whatever, or even to Avodas Hashem, to have a v'yira, to Baltani doing like, this is all different kinds of love. Wow, what are you talking about? That's not true. Different kinds of bittul. No, it's not. It might be true that if you go in these oilimus, you will experience such a kind of bittul, but that's very secondary or tertiary to what their mekulim are interested in. So of course, it's also true that everything goes through the human soul, and the soul is very important. We have to go back to our shir on the soul. It's all, and the Mekbilim believe in the microcosm thing, so everything is reflected in the human soul. All these things are true, but they're true backwards.
Are the Mekbilim like similar to the scientists today?
Yeah, in some ways. In some ways.
Into the how, not into the what?
In some ways. No, I'm not a shir in Kabbalah. Mekbilim, you could read some modern people say this. The Mekbilim see themselves like, okay, but this is totally off topic. Yeah, the Mekbilim are scientists. They're basically scientists and not philosophers. They think that the world doesn't have to be explained entirely rationally. It just has to explain the way it is. And the way it is might not make sense to you entirely. Okay, but that's not the point now. Point is, totally irrelevant. The point is that you read them and you see them really being excited about things that we can't get excited about. And this is always a good sign that something is wrong. I don't think it's a sign that, you got to learn Kabbalah, and we'll tell you the nimshal. That's nonsense. There's no nimshal. Of course there's a nimshal. I'm not saying that it's literal, there's pipes. That's not the point. These are frameworks of thinking and whatever. But the Mekabbalim don't say this, and I don't believe that someone wrote a whole book at Chaim just because he's trying to say a mushal for Chassidish Torah. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. Now you could say it was wrong, like said that, but you can't. That would be chutzpah. But this would just be wrong because there's some kind of way. Maybe it's not the way we think, so you should be moided that this is not. But you can't and the fact that many people say, well, we got to make sense of this, and to make sense of it, we have to superimpose it on a whole different system of thought, all the way to the most basic things. That's nuts. The only way to really make sense of it is to try to get into that guy's head. Maybe it's impossible, so it's shver avoid. But that's the avoid. Okay, so that's the basic thing,
It's connected to the series on the Rishonim.
Yeah, that's all the series. That's all.
It's like you just said it.
Yeah, that's all of the that's the series that started this whole rabbit hole. Yeah, because that's when I realized this. So this is behind a lot of these things. And this means that this causes us not to understand nicht the Mekabbalim, nicht the Rambam, nicht anyone, because we're putting them all into the boxes that we have, and they had totally different boxes. And the interesting thing is, I don't even know about deciding if our boxes are correct or theirs, but the interesting thing is to start to get at this. Like what is actually going on.
Is there a relative problem here that you can't evaluate them based on...
Yeah, there's a baya. Yeah, but that's already meta. Like, how do I decide which one is right? I don't even know if this is possible. I think that, that's the McIntyre problem.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I would say something like this.
He points out like
he thinks that
flaws,
he says things.
Certain systems just kind of fail in and of themselves or cap at a certain point.
Yeah, he says things, but I don't need to go this far. I mean, not
but
right now.
It's also Aristotelian, kind of somewhat internal to it.
Yeah, I don't need to get to this problem right now. This is a problem. How do we compare systems that are different all the way? It's not something that I could actually solve. We have the similar problem in science. If you read Thomas Kuhn's book, you see that's the same kind of problem. So nobody has a good answer to this problem. But I think that it's possible to learn two systems, to at least be conscious of what's going on. That's step one. Then you can decide which one is right.
Problems that arise out of the new way of thinking, and then let's see, freedom of Jews are trying to deal with it. They just flailing around, trying to pretend that something's obvious just for no reason because they don't have the old just.
Yeah, from Jews would be able to. That's one true. You would be able to do much better apologetics if you could actually prove this. Because if you just accept someone else's premises and you start to argue with them, that's like a very bad move. Then you automatically lost because there's a reason. By the way, this is true. There's very deep thought, true thought, because there's a reason why people are like, these, whatever. I'm not saying what my opinion is about anything, but people get very lost where you see the results of a certain. How do I say this in the nicest, most politically correct way? People get very lost or get very upset at certain excesses of certain what the Western world comes on. Everyone gets stuck by a different step where this is already crazy, but up until now you were making sense. And this is a nice thing, but that's not interesting to me. It has to do with my shmis about matter it's being boring. So you say, well, liberal, I'm a classical liberal, but that makes sense, but the next step is not. That's not true. There's a very basic insight of liberalism that leads all the way to wherever you hate. And it's so obvious and so easy, and it's very hard to argue against it, and there's a reason. There's a reason why it happens. That takes time because culture doesn't go straight with philosophy, but in some ways, at least Hegel will tell you that culture is basically philosophy playing itself out. There's a kasha at teretz and another kasha, another teretz, and then finally we get to the maskuna, and then we see if it works.
I would say that's the fallacy.
Hegel says this is chayze tamid, right?
Because that's how he understands philosophy to work.
I would say it's the fallacy of the slippery slope fallacy because it's
slippery slopes are usually true. In other words, it's usually true that if you
minute and you're like, no, we're not going to go down.
It's true if you accept a certain. Right. I'm not saying it's true, but if you accept a certain way, it's true that if you change your socks, you should already be Mechal Shabbos, whatever, as if that's the worst thing you can do. But if you change the bells, the roof changes the socks, then he might as well become a goy. This is true. This is true. In other words, there's a basic, because changing the socks is not. I'm not saying that change. Of course, not changing has a point, but it's symbolizing. It's belonging to a certain system of thought, which automatically leaves that, and it's kind of predictable.
The moral panics turned out correct for that reason. They just might have. They might not have said the right word.
Okay, we're moving on from politics. Point is that if you want to really, which means, but also, this is also why we can't do this, because which means that if you want to actually argue with something, what you got to do is argue with the premise, or at least if you want to actually think, if you think that there's something wrong with this, and it's obviously wrong, I don't know how, but if you think that there's something wrong, and you think, well, there has to be an alternative. Wait, we have this whole tradition going on. It's the long tradition. Some seems to say something different than what the New York Times says. Maybe we should use it. You can't use it within the framework that they're thinking in. You have to say, wait, this is disagreeing with everything. You also have to be careful not to become a Nazi, so whatever, I'm not getting into this. Point is,
why do you have to be careful not to become a Nazi?
Because it's also a mistake. Yeah. Because that's also a mistake. But to do politics. You understand why. You can make the cheshbon yourself. But the point is that there's a different basis for a lot of things that are shared, and that different basis means it might also be able to lead to all kinds of things that we think are crazy. But it definitely doesn't lead. It's not like just standing one step behind on the ladder or the goal or whatever. So Now, okay, that's the Akduma that you know all this, okay? So I was trying to tease out something about this happiness thing, okay? That's what I'm holding with trying to do something like this. And I could describe sort of the like brach, like the crash story that he has or whatever it is, relative to happiness. And it looks something like this. There are these ancient books that talk about happiness a lot. Famously, again, so I'm going to repeat, the Rambam says that Simcha is a big value in Avodas Hashem, and he made it up all by himself. To be very clear, the Rambam, I think we proved this last time. The Rambam made up that Simcha is a very important thing. It doesn't say in the Pusik that he quotes, he pretends that says it. Obviously, it doesn't say the Rambam knows that, it doesn't say it's Nishkam Pshat, Kol Madrash. And it doesn't say in the Gemara, of course there's a Psik Gemara, but it doesn't really say what he's trying to prove from there. At least, again, it doesn't have to say, it could say, but it doesn't have to say. And there were actually explicitly other Rishonim, other people that disagreed with this, so I know that this is not the simple reading of the sources. But he seems to have centered it very strongly, and there must be a reason for this. And this is one of the weird things that the Rambam's modern Talmidim totally missed for some weird reason. The Chassidim noticed it, but for a different reason, like I'll get to. And they didn't find anyone explaining why the Rambam thinks that Simcha is the main thing. But if you read any ancient ethical work, you obviously understand that. And it's so weird. This is like one of my rayas that all the professors of the Rambam don't know what they're talking about, because they don't talk about Simcha enough. The Rambam himself doesn't, but it seems to be obvious that this connection seems to be obvious. Because it's literally the word happiness or osher, whatever which is translation for these words, which is what the Rambam talks about. And this is the word that Aristotle uses and everyone is using. So there must be the reason. That's my basic connection, basic association. And yeah, I think that if you read older, like the Rishonim, you see people saying things like this explicitly. I haven't found like the Maggid Mishnah even says something close to this, or in Achas Liliv. Maybe others.
That happiness today is this obscure term.
Okay, so wait, we're getting to today. So that's my first hanocha, and I think that this is one proof that people don't know it, because the Rambam.
When you say happiness, old 9 definitions?
No, I'll get to it.
Definitions.
All of the reason all these 9 things get connected, or most of them, is because of this. This is the basic thing. Everything else, the details, we have to flesh out all these things, but the reason why this is centered, I'm talking about the so that's the thing that I think. Now, there's another interesting thing, which is Hasidus. I have to mention it, so Hasidim here. No Chassidim? Maybe. Here Chassidim. The Chassidim present themselves, interestingly, as promoting Simcha very strongly. Everyone knows about Reb Nachman, but it's not only Reb Nachman, right? All the Chassidim are very into Simcha, each in their way. Yeah, and they present this in many different ways. Sometimes they're like against Murish Choyre, against Tzegifim, against fasting and being like tzekfetched, or against as chizik, all kinds of different ways that they present it. But they seem to focus this in a very strong way, and the Litvaks right away notice this and say, no, this is not traditional, this is not Yiddishkeit, it doesn't say anywhere they have to be b'simcha. And this was like one of the first, if you read the Charama, if you read the Vilensky's book, you see this mentioned there. It's like one of the important things. Kol Yimem Kechagim, steht in the Chayrim, remember?
Whose book?
Okay.
The Nesivas and the
right. There's all these Mekairis. Right. Yeah, there were the Tambul sources people. So this is all a real thing, and there's something going on here. Okay. And now I think that the Chassidim, at least what it seems to me that they think Simcha is all messed up. But there's a reason why they're doing this. And I think that the reason they're doing this, I don't know, this is just wild theorizing, is that there is true that since Litvaks read too much Kant, or I don't know, whatever, there's an internal to Judaism development here. You don't have to always blame some guy. But the point is that Litvaks, the way halacha is presented, becomes totally disconnected from anything. And Simcha seems to be the thing that reconnects it.
Anything you mean what? Like reality?
Well, let's talk. They're only care about humans, about human perfection, to shlemus and nishi. Okay, it's a whole bunch of do's.
That's rooted in the observation of what a person is, and not.
We'll get to wait. This is already Aristotle. But for anything, to connecting to God. That's the way they say it, right? Achieving God, being master God, having dveikus in God, whatever it is.
They will tell you that following the halacha gets you there, but only as an accident, right? Like not
mostly in Olam Haba, mostly in Olam Haba, in the next world.
Right.
Mashiach comes, they don't actually believe that it gets you there, or that it doesn't actually get you there.
But it's the arcade, and you give your tickets in at the end. There's no immediate.
Maybe that's already philosophy, but possibly. The point is that there's something noticed here, and there's a reason why the Chassidim think that Simcha is a solution to this. Like there's something, whenever you see someone centering something, there's something going on. Like there's a reason why, like you can say, oh, these are happy people. There's always happy people. There's always people into ecstasy even. Like, nisht, I'm happy. We're gonna be jumping off the vans and the intersections. But there's a reason why these people are doing this. By the way, those people are right, but that's for a third reason. Because of different hamshech of this, late capitalism. But the point is, there's a reason for this. And I think that, and they always bring the Rambam, Shteit, and the Gemara Shteit, and the Pusik Shteit, and David HaMelech HaGezok, and these things are true. I mean, if you read, the Rambam noticed this, right? The Gemara about Simcha noticed this, about how Elisha and Shaul, they had music going on. And in Judaism, at some point, we stopped doing music for some weird reason. I think just because we're poor.
And the VM weren't able to be in Snabba without...
Yeah, that's the Pusik that we're discussing. There's Pusik of Elisha and there's Pusik of Shaul. Yeah, the Rambam brings the Gemara that brings this. Yeah. But this is part of it, but like, okay, I'm sure there were many Voileiden between the Gemara and the Rambam, between the Rambam and the Baal Shem Tov, that seem to have been doing pretty well without music, without dancing and singing. I don't know, maybe they didn't. I don't know. The Vilna Gaon, I don't know.
Maybe there's a better.
Didn't seem to feel a need for it.
No. Maybe the Vilna Gaon would.
Yeah, just Titus, I know. In an intellectual way.
It also depends where it comes in. It could come in the beginning, and maybe you would say that's not really a great thing. But let's say you would say the Vilna Gaon is the most happy person, but he'd be even happy with music after all that. It has a place where it comes in and it's appropriate. Okay, let's do one distinction that I think is a very clear distinction. I don't know if we discussed it last time, and then we'll see which is right. But my basic intention here is that Chassidus, like everything else, are trying to restore something because of this breakdown, and they're just doing it in a very clumsy way. That's my basic theory of Chassidus, working theory for this week. Chassidus always notices the correct problems, and they try to correct it in the most clumsy way possible.
All Chassidus, or when you say Chassidus, you mean Chabad?
Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, everyone. I don't know of any bounds Chassidus that exists. Yeah, there were people that Chabad is already trying to fix Chassidus. Ich hab's nicht. Very explicitly, no, okay, not even unconsciously. Everyone. He's trying to fix something. I don't know what. So, but what is the thing that they're trying to fix? They're trying to fix this thing. Now let's try to talk about Simcha. Let's talk about two things that I know about Simcha. This is where I started last week, so I'm trying to see. And I think this is where the Chassidim are at least somewhat confused. So, there's nicht normal, hacken Chassidim. Point is, so there's two meanings that we could talk. The word Simcha, and I think the word Simcha, we could go Shemes Nadufim. I'm not caring about all of these things. They all mean the same thing. Greek for eudaimonia, or simcha, or joy, happiness, maybe even pleasure. Let's still talk about pleasure. All of these things, sort of, let's assume they more or less mean the same thing. And we could talk about it in two very distinct ways. And I think that we have to not be confused about this. One is simcha, or joy, as a kind of feeling, or if I would even go lower and say a kind of sensation. Okay? We've got a bunch of sensations. Now this is sort of weird. This goes back to this on its own. Sensations Aristotle says this, okay? And I think that this, in cognitive science, there's a whole discussion about this. But Aristotle says that sensation has pleasure built in. There's no sensation that isn't by itself, sensation in the sense of sense, the sense of touch, and up from there. The sense already is always either pleasant or painful. Opposite of pleasant. Now that's not exactly simcha. That's the first definition of simcha. So right, and we could even define which sensations are pleasant and which aren't, and so on. But the point is that sensation. You could have physical sensations in the sense, like a sense. I feel something. If I feel this, it feels. I don't know if it feels good. If I feel something softer, it feels better. But it has to be like more or less in the middle, right? If it's too soft, it doesn't feel anything. If it's too hard, it hurts. So that's Derech HaMitzvah is good, even for senses. By the way, Aristotle says this on the soul, in one of the chapters on the senses. Okay. He doesn't connect it to the ethics, but he says that sense has to be some kind of in-betweenness of what it's receiving, of what it's sensing. Between hot and cold, too cold is nicht good and too hot is nicht good. Not only nicht good because it breaks you, because it feels bad, right? It hurts, right? The feeling comes along with pain or pleasure, if it's the perfect temperature. And maybe, like you say, if you're too cold and you want it hotter, if you're too hot, you want it hotter, colder, but it's
the human?
There's a human sense of touch. Well, now I'm talking about humans now. Now, we'll talk about objectivity in a minute. Talk about humans now. That's a sensation. Now, just like I think, you'll tell me if I'm all wrong about this. I think just like it's clear. Just like there's sensations like physical, what we call bodily sensations, there are also psychological sensations. We could call them sensations of the mind, sensations of the soul. So, for example, this is right. These are the same thing as sensations, but by which I mean they're just a way, maybe of letting you know something. Like a sense is supposed to tell you something, but maybe not. But at least some kind of like a state or
it's a point of contact between you and something else.
But let's say if I want to do this to something more inner, this is what I'm trying to think. If I talk about psychological sensation, I would say something like, sometimes it's because of a physical sensation, but it doesn't have to be. But it's something, we could maybe call it even physical in some sense. Aristotle, this goes back also to how on this song. But you would say something like, I feel happy, or I feel love, or I feel all the things that we call emotions. Okay, Aristotle doesn't hold of emotions too much. Barely goes to them. He doesn't think they're a real thing. But emotions, what we call emotions, anger, happiness. I don't know if pleasure is an emotion. Happiness, in the sense of an emotion, is just a sensation. So when we what the Chassidim talk about this, I think what Chassidim usually mean when they talk about simcha, they're talking about a certain feeling. You could feel down, you could feel up. This is something, at least analogous to a sensation, I think. Just a kind of feeling. You could take a certain drug that gives it to you, right? Known as alcohol, very ancient drug. There might be other drugs, but this is like, they talk about, right? This is not unknown, right? Everyone knew that you could take drugs that make you happy forever. Not something that we discovered like last week or something. It's a posek, right? Yain Samach, Levav Enish. So this is just a kind of sensation. We might have to try to figure out philosophically if it's the same exact thing as a touch. What is it touching? Right? It's not really touching anything. That's why it's weird. Emotions. Not clear what it's telling me about. At least if I feel pleasure from touching something, it lets me know there's something there. I can be a fantasy. I can make mistakes, but not entirely. But whatever. But the point is, it's supposed to tell me something. But these what we call emotions, or what I call now sensations of the soul, or sensations of the mind, sensations of the enzymes in your brain, or whatever they're called, these are also sensations. They're a way that you feel, right? That's how we say you're feeling good, you're feeling bad. People might want to say, we might want to distinguish another level where we say I'm feeling happy and there's a mood. Maybe these are two different things. Because, for example, when you're depressed, it doesn't always seem like wine helps. Sometimes it doesn't help. People like to claim that it never helps, that it just makes you forget, but that's not true. It definitely sometimes helps, literally. But sometimes it doesn't.
What does it doesn't?
Drugs.
Oh.
Some drugs definitely actually make you happy. In different ways, but whatever. The end result is that you actually feel happy. Someone say maybe you're just escaping, whatever. But I feel happy, right? If I'm escaping or not. Sometimes you're not. But there's.
With what it's good enough
but this sensation of happiness must be what the drug affects. Now, what is it sensing? I don't know. This is a good question to try to explain what it exactly is. Some people will say it's maybe a long-term sensation. Like when we say, what's the difference between being in a good mood and feeling happy? Being in a good mood is like a statistic of having happy thoughts or happy sensations. Like when you say someone's in a good mood today, it means 80% of his thoughts are happy, of his immediate senses or something like that. And the opposite. And maybe if you're depressed, that means that somehow there's some machinery that's making you be noted to this, whatever. But that's basically the first concept of happiness. And I think that's very important. That's what modern people think, that this is the only thing that could be happiness. Because I'm coming to start telling you that there could be an happiness that you don't feel at all, or it's even worse than that. Maybe you do feel it, but it's irrelevant. That's not what makes it happy. You can look at me like I'm just telling you something. I think this is where people get stuck. Telling you something that's just like niche, doesn't add up. 2 and 2 is 29. Like, it's not. There's people seem to think that this doesn't make any sense.
There's anything beyond there.
That you could be happy, and not only happy. Did I say all of this last week? No. That you could not only be happy, not like giving you a new word. That let's call something else happy. That you could actually be happy. In other words, this thing that the sense maybe causes you a little bit, or maybe for in some way, what you really mean by that, what you really want out of that, what we really call happy in the sense, is really not relevant, not related to the sense at all.
That I would receive, let's say, as a sensation that informed me of, let's say, a happiness that exists independently of this state.
Independently of.
Let's say the sight of a lake can exist whether or not there is a lake there, but the sight of a lake informs me that there's a lake.
Yeah, but I don't have that.
The lake might not be there; it could be a mirage, right?
Yeah, but I don't have that sight.
What do you mean? Meaning, is this happiness that we're saying that exists independently of sense? Does sense notify us of it, or at least unreliably so, but notifies us of it?
No, it's not relevant, not related at all. I didn't yet say what that would be. I didn't yet say what that would be. There might be a way to connect it to the sense. I don't know clearly, but I think there would be a totally different thing. Not only would it be a totally different thing, it would even change the definition of the one that you're sensing when you have this sense. In other words, I would tell you. Well, I wanted to talk about sex. I would tell you that the pleasure that you have in sex is actually the pleasure of having children. That's what Aristotle would say. And you're just confused when you think that it's the sex that's enjoyable, or that makes you happy. And I could try to prove it, or philosophically, or experientially even. And people nowadays think this is one of the modern things. People think that it's impossible. Not it's like you could have such a theory, and they have all kind of funny kashas, like, well, what if someone doesn't get pregnant every time, all these funny different kashas. But the point is that we don't seem to accept the possibility of this immediate thing, this thing that I'm just calling sensation, being all what defines it, right? I'm not denying that it exists and all of that, but people think that must be what defines happiness or even pleasure. That's what defines it. That is what it is. They say, okay, maybe, and that's why we get to these things where it becomes impossible to disagree, right? Because I feel happy. What do you mean I don't feel happy? Happiness is just something that I feel, and I feel it. And you're coming around and saying, Moshe Rabbani comes and said, no, you're going to be happy, but in some other way. What does that even mean? It seems to be impossible. I might try to push you in some direction. I tried to push you, and that is possible. Maybe I could train you to like it, all kind of things like that. But by Yesod, in principle, people think that it's impossible. I think that not only people think.
You disagree with them about if drugs actually make you happy. You would say, this sensation does exist, and they would say, no, the fact is that there's something more than that, and that more than that is just the same thing, so it must be really you're not happy. And you would say that there's something more than that. I'm just talking on a lower level, and they only have one level.
Right, so that's why they must deny that.
Yeah, it must be
exactly. Since I have two levels, I'm very happy with the first level existing in its way, and the second level or the third level has many other will add, having their own thing, and maybe being the real thing, and therefore the sensation is not something you should chase at all, or whatever. You just messed up when you're chasing it, or you're sick, literally. But I don't have a problem with that one existing. Exactly. This is why Aristotle, that's why I mentioned wine, because people often think, and not only people since ancient times have thought that this is an argument against dualism, right? If you think your soul is independent, and interestingly, I could give you a cup of wine and you stop being able to think, or you start thinking differently. But that's only a kasha if you sort of have a weird Cartesian dualism that's supposed to not have anything to do with anything. But if it obviously has something to do, then of course, at least, and to the extent that it has to do, I could change it with wine. Maybe it's even a condition, whatever, we'll figure out this whole hylomorphism way of thinking. Then obviously you need to have a good brain in order to have a good mind. These are not totally different things. They're part of one thing. What?
Maybe there's a bone in the back of my brain that connects them.
Yeah, right. Okay. But then we have to figure out if the wine goes in that bone or a different one. I don't know. Point is, okay, but kid said, yeah, that's true. So this is what I'm trying to get at. So there's sensation and there is something else. Let's say, and nowadays people just don't believe there's anything else. And if you do say there's something else, they say, well, you just made up a new word and you called it the same old word, and that's totally useless. Whatever, we're just arguing semantics now. So we need to figure out how to argue with this, how to prove that this is just messed up. But what would be the other thing that we call?
It would be nice if you could connect it to answer back.
Yeah. Of course it connects. This is why it's harder to do. Because if I would just go around, see, this is what, if you could just be a Baal Musa and go around saying, whatever, and this is just a game. Like, what does it even mean? Really, the true happiness is being sad, whatever. Like, what's the point of that? That's just words.
Meaning, the point of this discussion that becomes interesting is to the person who, let's say, is only entertaining something, happiness is a sensation, is when you say, you I guess, put lines of questioning like, well, why do you want the sensation? And then eventually it's, well, for the reason why you want the sensation, you should want this more.
Maybe.
Is that like...
Maybe that's a way to do it.
I think also if it affects it. If it affects
maybe
it
that's a way
to
do it.
If it affects your sensations from the top.
But our problem is that want is also just a sensation, you see? According to most Hamdige people. Want just means... What does want mean? You need to get it. You need to have the word should have a real meaning there. Because want just means I have a feeling of, attraction to this or something like that. That's what most people think want means by definition. So want doesn't help us much. And they say, what do you mean? I want this. Teach me to want something else. Like why? How do you even get from here to there? That's the real problem. That's why I think that this kind of argument, and this is, I think it's the Mishnah that's trying to make this argument. There's a Gibba Mishnah. And, Socrates is keeping on doing it. I think we discussed that. You're really looking for wisdom when everything else you're looking for, you're really looking for that. You just don't know it. Vashantas tries to do it in some way, and he needs to build up a whole weird metaphysics for it to make sense. And I think it's Filtishtas. That's my whole thing. It has this whole thing where if you want the sweetness, you really want the sweetness of God. And, this title, basic Platonism. Okay. You got to read the Maggid. Okay, he says things like this. Point is, these kind of things, and then, so the Maggid has this thing, just like Plato, if you read like the Phaedrus, is a very good example of this, where he says, well, lust or beauty, he calls it beauty, is really the forms trying to teach you to love God. And whenever you love a boy, I discussed this once here, that's the God of love or whatever, basically trying to get you to love the forms. And the Maggid of Mezrich says things like this. Says, well, how do you get to God? Oh, it's simple. There's like love or pleasure. So you like a plate of soup. But then, what is this love? What is this pleasure? What makes a plate of soup pleasurable? It must be God. So might as well love God. That's what it says in Maggid many times. And then the Yeshid Vremes comes along and says, what? This is like a weird Kal V'chomer. And even if the Kal V'chomer would work, God is 10 times more pleasurable than this. So that's human soul is not a particular gemurah, it doesn't work. But this is all because he doesn't understand what is really going on. So it becomes all about, this is what my contention here. So it becomes all about him feeling. So the Chassidim, for example, notice that there's a problem. So they go, we need simcha. And then simcha turns into chasing a feeling of euphoria or a feeling of pleasure or of being ecstatic or whatever all the time. And then they get into a problem because this is not a psychologically stable state. So we start figuring out all kinds of Torahs, what to do with this, and most Chassidus is about this. Nowadays, I don't know what it's about. This is what it used to be about in the 18th century. If you read the early Chassidish Historian, they're all worried about these kind of problems. They're very worried, for example, of this problem of the instability of emotions. Let's talked about this last time, I think. Tanek Tmidi. Love of God is not and it's nothing new. No emotions are stable. Because sensations are not stable things, or at least not stable enough for what they want it to be. Which means that don't really exist, because things that go away, come and go away, don't exist. They have this basic Platonic insight, intuition. So when we ask if I love God, and if I feel like I'm davening and I feel like I love God, and then I don't feel like it. So what's going on? Then we get the whole Koska thing, so really I don't love God, but this is all messed up. The point is, so we got to find a better way of doing this. And the better way of doing this is by trying to remind ourselves what the old way of doing this was. Right? And the old way of doing this was to try to totally, and Aristotle explicitly discusses this, Plato also, there is something beyond both of these two things. I didn't even give a definition of what the second kind of happiness would be. Second kind of happiness would be the most basic way of defining it would be in English, if I ask if you're happy, it works better if I say if you're happy with something. So are you happy with your life? Do you have a happy life? Which is already slightly different from feeling happy.
Sensations when you ask that question.
Well, some people might claim it is. I don't know, but it seems to be easy to at least make sense to people that it's not that. Like,
I think they would say it does, but really what they mean is it
happy
trickles down
about
to that. It doesn't actually, like, we're not talking about
I think
that
people understand that when you ask are you happy about, are you happy about something X, Y in the world? Are you happy about the economic state in Cambodia? You're not
but the important thing is that,
right?
exactly, the important thing is that even if I'm asking you, so you're happy with the president, I'm not at all talking about a pleasurable sensation.
Right.
I'm talking about something entirely different, which seems to be the same word that means something totally different, right? I don't mean, like, do you go to the club and like that's the president? Maybe you do that, but that's not the point, right? I mean to say, do you like agree with him being the president? Do you
think it fits?
do you think it fits? Do you think it's he's good? But it's basically all bound with, do you think that it's good? It's good, right? Do you think that it's good that he's the president? So it turns out to mean this almost the same thing as good for something. Happiness of something is what's good for it. And that's why it's totally irrelevant to your emotions. Right? Like say, are you happy with your life? Yeah, very happy. Are you happy right now? No, I'm like really mad or things are going bad today. Right? But I'm still happy with my life. And become Evdes Hashem B'Simcha or whatever. And the same thing for loving God, by the way. That's why drama has a whole different meaning. But loving God, I don't know where they even got this idea of loving God being an emotion. It's not a pshat, and it's not a sad, and it's not anything. Loving God just means having an opinion that God is to be loved. Opinion is a bad word. A daya, a thought.
So.
I think that it's exactly that God is worthy of being loved more than. And Chabad, they explicitly discussed this, and that they tried to work with this, and they like, but this is not enough. It is enough. It's not whatever. Point is, that's pashtas what it means. Even assuming that it means love, b'chlal, but pashtas doesn't mean having any kind of emotion. There might be some place for these emotions, I'm not saying, but I'm saying that that's not the main meaning of it. And that's not the real meaning of it. And not only that, so this is like seems to be simple. Like we have a whole different thing called happiness, and very clearly, if you read Aristotle, it's like, now we have to go to a third level. So I have these two things. There's happiness as a sensation, just like there's anything else as a sensation, and there's happiness as thinking that this is good, basically. We could say that being content, but again, contentment also seems to be something that we can give you drugs for. So this is something that you can't get drugs for. The second thing is the one that drugs can't affect.
I think
only in the sense of like I'm happy, I hold off taking drugs. Then you could affect. But that's not, you need only take the drug for that.
I think it connects to your mood in the sense that your mood kind of is like what specific thought is like the subconsciously controlling thought of that moment. Like you saw a lot of times you could almost pin down what the thought is. If you're in a bad mood, it's like ends up being this one thing. So the higher level thing is what kind of controlling what you have, like a good thing or a bad thing controlling. Like generally.
What do you mean? Like if, let's say I'm unhappy with the state of affairs in New York City. Me going to New York City puts me in a bad mood.
No, when people say they're
possibly
happy or unhappy,
right?
No. People who are happy when they say that word "I'm happy with life," which they don't mean a sensation. I think they mean something much more general, than much higher than that. What and ends up playing
much more
out
about
is
the
that,
life than about the feeling about it.
Right, but what ends up playing out is that a lot of moments in your life, you will focus on certain good things because of that general thing.
They might cause it indirectly, but it's not.
Okay, right, yeah.
So that's how it plays down in sensation. That's
how it seems to be. So let's try to do it in the Aristotle way, because I think that what happens is, I think that you get to these three things. So we have sensation, we have happiness in the sense of this is good, or maybe we're not really talking about that yet, right? We're talking about like what you're saying. Like I think it is good, then it's possible that it would believe. If I focus on it, you could say like if I put it into my like active consciousness, it will make me into a good mood. It will give me a pleasurable sensation.
It's going to sleep into your consciousness.
Or it will. That's also true. Maybe you'll just. That might be true too. Yeah, that might be true too. But let's talk. But we're still talking about something that's a fact about my life. So it's still subjective, right? We're talking about, when I say subjective in the sense that's a fact about me, not in any other sense, right? Because subjective people think it means doesn't exist or means something. So just a fact about me, right? In the way that pain is true. Pain is something that exists only me. This kind of happiness, the second kind of happiness we're discussing, is a fact about me. I think that my life is going good, or my life is going correctly. Even good is a bad word. Good is a bad word. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I think that my life, or I think this is like you asked if I'm happy with my car, right? I think that my car is fulfilling the function of cars that I need from my car. Well, now it's broken, but I'm still happy with it because it's generally not broken or whatever. But what we really need to do is, in order to like solve even this thing, like okay, so which one should I chase? Should I chase the drug the sensation, or should I chase the good things? It's not clear that we have an answer for that yet. I just told you two things. And obviously the one that's immediate is more immediate. Seems to be easier, at least, or more, not only easier, more explicit, more right here, right? The way I feel right now is actually going to change how I am right now. The way I am in general, like you say, maybe it will change my mood, maybe it have some kind of background. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be as immediate. So if there's Hashem Simcha, we got to do it right now. The way to do it is to do it the Chassidish way, not this the Rambam way.
Without any proofs, most people, as they grow older, end up by the side. They don't end up by the immediate sensation. It's just not where it doesn't.
Most people that are not.
Work.
So interestingly, this is just my observation. Most people that are not avdim, most normal people realize that immediate sensations are not lasting enough, and they switch over to looking for other things. Right. And in other words, most people, when they're like 35 or whatever, figure out that sex is pleasurable, but having children is even more pleasurable. And now, I think that's true. Having a family.
I think children are the best.
It's a good example, but it's so controversial. So I don't know.
I think children is borderline a steer.
Why? Because they make you sad.
Because immediately you're not sleeping. Let's say your baby wakes up.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that you're more happy.
Exactly. So it's actually the perfect.
It shows you that you don't have to actually be happy.
Right, exactly.
While like sex makes you happy at the moment, or whenever, for as long as it lasts. I don't know. Yeah, that's the correct example. But now we have to do something further than that, right? We want to go one step further. We want to say that the good of sex is the babies, or assuming that that's the goal of sex. Maybe there's other goals, but let's say that this is the goal. That's at least one of the goals, or at least the most important goal, probably, from the point of view of nature, for sure, right?
What is Joseph supposed to have?
From the point of view of nature, that's the most important goal, because it needs to have children. Evolution wants you to have children.
That's like the reason behind it, but it's also, I'm saying, it ends up playing out that you're supposed to have. The amount you're supposed to have is based on the amount you're supposed to have. Like
the amount of children?
The amount of how often you have sex, the amount of time your body needs it, like how many times.
Yeah, but that's already too much. It seems there's a big problem here because people that need is more than having children. But okay, there's mitzvahs. Now we say okay, so it's for bonding or whatever. It's like evolution says things like that also. Okay,
so you don't have like more like a medical thing.
That's true. In the sense, yeah, but that's the kasha on nature. So why is nature doing it? So the answer is that nature likes being. Okay, I'm not getting into this. The point that's not relevant. That's just a mushal. The point is, nature likes redundancy. They don't do anything once. They do everything a million times. So one should work. Just like mitzvahs. We give you 630, so maybe one should go. Like give you 6 million sperms, so one should have become a baby. That's how nature works, and that's why it's robust. That's the whole thing. It's not fragile.
Telebian.
What?
The Telebian vart?
Yeah, that's the Telebian vart. The point is that no. So what I need to do is a third step. I think this third step is even harder to get at. So we need to try to prove that this becomes the good of that. So in other words, there's a third thing really. So let's say we have these two things. Let's assume that everyone knows what these two things are, right? There's like contentment in life, having a life that gives you pleasure. And there's being happy right now. Like you're saying, most mature people, interestingly, the like real mevakshim never grow up. They're always looking for actual high. Like the Timothy Learys of the world. If they survive 30, I don't know, this is too old. The point is, they're always looking for the immediate high. Like the Shmaim stands.
And the whole society looks down at them.
Besides for Chassidish people. Chassidish people think that they're the biggest tzaddikim, those people. And it's in some sense it's true, but we have to figure it out why. The people that but some of us consider tzaddikim are the ones that actually never gave up on actually feeling the Dveikus all the time. The feeling. And there's a human cost. Yeah, the sensation, the feeling. This is a very good definition to have. Some Buddhists are about this. Some, like what we call seekers, in many ways it's about this. And you have to think about this. It's a serious question. It's just my definition. It's a certain clarity that I have. All the people that we call like mevakshim or seekers or tzaddikim or whatever are the people. Like the Chassidish, this is the Chassidish value at least. I don't know if it's a Litvish value. It's definitely the Chassidish value, but it's not only in the Chassidish world. This is in modern world we have people.
In the Yeshivish world, just different sensations. There's going to be some sort of sensation.
But it's not clear that the Yeshivish world is looking for that sensation. Like let's say you have like some eureka moment, like when you chap the sugya. Are the people looking for that all the time?
They like beating at
not sure.
Like getting fired up about certain things.
Yeah, could be. Some people are like that. Yitzchok Siratskin is always looking for that.
Most people are not like that.
Normal people aren't like that. Like Buchanim are like that, and then they grow out of it, and they figure out that it's not important. So there's something interesting going on. I think it's true, but the Chassidish world explicitly values this. They say Dvaikus means this, and the people that are like always in that state of mind, that state. What? Even more like that? Oh, he's without even the learning. He can at least learn, obviously.
No, he related very well to 16-year-olds.
Yeah, no, they're all. That's the whole thing. Okay.
They use the word Amal. They have all these words Amal used for that thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Reading a Raj for 80 times.
Okay, it's a kind of ecstasy.
This is the kind of
maybe. Okay. There's some of that. Okay. So, the Kalbach, whatever. They're all trying to get at this all the time, and it's very questionable if this was what the Baal Shem Tov wanted. No, if this is like a good thing at all. Or if there's a good way of doing it, like what, there's something wrong with. I think there's something like you're not. Okay, I'm not giving opinions. I'm just trying to give definitions. So this is why I think the Chassidim are messed up, because they notice that we need it, but then they say, okay, we're going to do the most immediate thing, and that might be counterproductive even.
Isn't this the idea of getting how you're supposed to progress through your life?
No. So wait, no.
Giving kids nash, and
yeah, but the nash is not a. He doesn't say give kids. Experiences, emotional, spiritual experiences. Maybe that's also.
Start off with nash, and then you start off with like COVID, and then you start.
Then you give you the kishmak and the rash, but then they finally tell you that's not the real. You gotta just be a good mensch.
Maybe. He kind of says this.
He doesn't talk about the kishmak of the rash, but of the shalshidus or whatever it is.
What he means, but he says. It's
possible.
A progression of
because they're immediate things.
Immediate, less immediate.
Possible. I mean, like COVID and things like that. Mm-hmm. But even COVID is different when what we mean by COVID, you see? The Baalei Mussar, they all think of COVID as a sensation. Like I'm walking into the chasna and everyone is saying, Yamim, and that's COVID. That's not COVID. That's not the Aristotelian COVID. Because when the Greeks talk about COVID, or even the Pusik talks about COVID, it's about a certain respect. Like the position that you have as a Shiva, that's the COVID. And then that's why it becomes very hard to say that it's a bad thing. See, if you're Muslim, you need COVID to be a bad thing. Not really possible to make that COVID into a bad thing. That COVID just means respect or position or dignity or power, which is just a fact. Like, what are you going to do? Not, I mean, you could say it's a bad thing and then you just not being the Shiva. There's no way to be the Shiva that doesn't like COVID. That's a contradiction. Of course, not silly COVID. Who cares about the shishi? That's stupid. That's because you're confusing. You think that the fact that the Shiva gets the Aliyah, that makes him the Shiva. That's not what makes him the Shiva. That's a kid's thing, right? That's what people. It's so funny. Wow, I'm just realizing this. It's true. Like I've heard someone.
When you say cover, you mean like the cover of being the person who actually makes the decision.
The being, exactly, or the being respected by others, whatever. Maybe COVID is just in the minds of others. We could talk about this, but that still exists. They dignity, yeah. Right, but Aristotle is. I mean, it's almost a virtue. I mean, not entirely. It's almost a virtue to have a certain kind of dignity.
He visits it a few times.
Yeah, it's not because it's problematic because it's not self-sufficient and all of this. But what I'm saying is that it's interesting that I'm trying to get at this because this is very important. Our whole worldview is prioritizing the states way too much. Like we see about people talking about COVID. Like I had listened to someone, a certain mashpia talking recently. He said, when he was a kid, he thought like, the Rebbe, whatever, is coming into the shul and getting so much COVID. And he's like looking at him if he's like, they say if he's getting nishpa from the COVID, like if he's feeling it. And then he got it himself and he noticed that this is nonsense. But that's true, because of course, what kids think the Rebbe is and what the Rebbe actually is are two different things. Kids think that the Rebbe is the guy that gets everyone to clap for him, but that's not what being a Rebbe is. That's a nikra, that's an accident of the Rebbe, and it's not even the COVID that the Rebbe has. That's not the COVID ochnish. That happens to be the center of the Villim, whatever.
Like cheap celebrity stuff.
It's not even COVID, that's what I'm saying. It's not even, this is a good example by the way. It's not even COVID. When you want to be a Rebbe, and if you want that, you're being very stupid, because I can get you a video camera of a bunch of people doing that. Like some people on that, you'll be happy. Like the Reb Chaim Shmulevitz thing, where like, they say Chaim, and he thinks it's him, and he feels good.
Playground?
No, someone mentioned, I think, later in here somewhere.
You said, I'll remember this.
Reb Chaim Shmulevitz said that there's different versions of this, but like when he hears someone talking as a Reb Chaim, he feels good. He knows that they don't mean Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, they mean Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. But says Reb Chaim, maybe you never know, maybe this time he means me. But this is like real Musar Nikvart, and it's real noticing your thoughts, and he had those thoughts, I'm not saying he was lying. But this is messed up, because the COVID that's not interesting. Like, if you're mature, you don't notice these things. And that's
COVID is when they're actually mean.
That's not even exactly. And no, COVID is when they say you're by mistake and they don't say your name and they mean you. And COVID is when you're standing behind and you're actually the one that set up the whole thing and nobody knows who you are because you're just the gabba or whatever. That's COVID. I don't know if that's COVID. That's more like power. But that's power, at least, that most people want when they say COVID. And the fact that we're so focused on these, like, did he feel it? That's nonsense. confused. And now the real question of kavod is if that position is a good thing. That's another question. And handling that correctly, that means handling kavod correctly. Handling the l'chaim correctly, or whatever, the Baruch Haba, that's nonsense. That's that's just, I don't know, it's like just not being grown up. Yeah, and like you could say, okay, some people exaggerate, so I don't know, that's just like a question of, yeah, some people like it. I mean, I don't think it's even bad to enjoy it, by the way. Like, why wouldn't you enjoy it? So, guys, give me a code, say thank you. Like, why not? It's usually people enjoy that. Like, if he gives you a candy, it's the same thing as a candy, basically. Do you enjoy candies? I know these some of them that like you need to pretend. Exactly. The Balmus are just the opposite. A lot
of mirrors were obsessed. One of them used to walk in when they were saying Shema and stand up for moms, obsessed with not letting these small things happen.
No, there are such things in the Gemara already.
But
then
he also didn't let people know they learned either. Some of them, so they did it on a greater level. Like they don't want to see them ever learn. Some of them have never been seen, never saw.
Maybe the Taka never learned. You never know.
Did both.
Maybe Taka worked.
No, the people secretly found him. Yeah. No one ever saw him. We also ran in during Shema, so no one to stand up for him. He's into like both of those.
Yeah, I think at some level that's dumb. There's a way to accept that. That's another discussion. But at least it's not even the cover that you should be. It's like a candy. It's like a kid. Like you have tavas achila, so you like candies. Then you grow out of it. Does you stop liking candy? If someone gives you a candy and you're in the right mood, take it and eat it. Why not? Like there's nothing bad about it. That's not the bad. People think that enjoyment is bad. If there's something bad, it's the actual thing that's bad. Now we have to discuss if it's bad or good. So don't be the Rashiva. Don't tell me that you're the Rashiva, but you come in. But that doesn't help anyone. It's just, I think that's true. The Balamusa, like the Chassidim, have way too much focus on their internal states, on their moment-to-moment internal states, which are not so interesting. That's why it's not so important.
When someone attacks it, but
it's impressive that someone is conscious, that he's not in denial, but like it's not the point. That's not the point. That's not what a human being is about. I don't think.
It seems to fail at some point for that reason.
Because you drive yourself meshige. Because it's like if you have this differentiation of levels that I'm trying to clarify, then this is a level that always works. It's like saying so your body should stop working. Because since you're such a tzaddik, so why do you need to go to the bathroom? Like that's no shayach. So you got to go to the bathroom. You go to the bathroom. You got to eat. You eat. Of course, there's like exaggerations in that, right? If you eat more than that level actually needs, then you're already doing something wrong. But it's trying to break this seems to make no sense.
On what's Kelm like this, because he went for his money, he hated it.
Yeah.
And he hated like the small detail that he walked in. It's famous, so he walked in, and no one looked at him the whole 2 hours. And not one person said hi. He's just standing there like an idiot. I talk him. So I don't think he meant that. He pointed someone to look for people to be the guy who looks to see if someone's walking in. It's like he left after his mind. I think his point was like I hear your point in general to try to get to a state of not being someone just turns around all day, but like you're so busy not turning around right now.
Like, okay, but that's a different. I don't know. My impression of Kelm is a little more higher than that, but that's a different discussion. I think that this maybe I don't know. I don't know if he's getting at this point, but it's possible. But okay, what Tachlis is, so now we have a good example of something that's like we see it. The Kavod is a good example. Even pleasure is like this, but physical pleasures are like this. But Kavod is a better example because it's like originally not entirely a physical sensation. So we could say when you're looking for Kavod, you're not even looking for that. You're looking for some validation. Right? That's a matter in psychology speak. But you're looking for dignity, for respect, for being up to something. You're not looking for that's nonsense. And now, so then we can take it a step further and say the real Kavod is, in other words, if you're really looking for being something, for being validated, for having dignity and for having honor is the ancient word, then you should be a moral person, for example. Because a moral person is a person with honor. This is very important, right? Remember? A moral person are people with honor. So in other words, if you lie, you're disrespecting yourself. If you break your promise, that's the basic honor culture, right? If you break your promise, you're not that person. So you don't have Kavod. So if you lie and you get everyone to clap for you, you don't have Kavod. You have something else. You have like the candy version of Kavod. Maybe it's Kavod. It's probably even a perversion of that. But you don't have actual honor. You don't have respect. Respect, and there's self-respect. And self-respect is just as good as others' respect. Maybe even better. Because you don't need others. And for some reason, which part of it is like this contradiction in respect. You don't really want to be nitzrach lebrias. Like the Balakanda, if you're looking for Kavod, then you're the biggest other man because you need everyone. Like a middle person goes to shul, you need 3 people to give Shalom Aleichem. The Rebbe comes to shul, he needs 1,000 people. Like he's the biggest man ever, right? It's very sad. Now, actually, such people.
I imagine if you don't have self-respect and you need respect, then you're the most sick person. Most like.
No, nothing. Everyone. I think it's part of human to need a certain level of respect, but also from others.
If you don't respect yourself and you want other people, so that's like the most candy version of it. Like seeing that minimally you should respect yourself.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can expect other people.
But the point is that what you're looking for when you're looking for respect is not actually the clapping or the anything. What you're looking for is, it's true, and it would be shown by, and this is an easy way of saying, okay, so here it's easy sort of to show you that you're just making a mistake. But how do I teach it to you? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be so easy to teach. But they're just making a mistake. In other words, not that you're making a mistake, that you're looking for Gashmias and you should be looking for Rachnis, which is really words or some nonsense like that. You just don't understand the thing that you're looking for. It's like, in other words, the only way to make this make sense is to have like some kind of goal that we both agree on that is beyond both of these things, right? By the COVID, it sort of works. I say, are you looking for, because it's easy to say, are you looking for a bunch of people to clap because I can get you a bunch of robots? That seems to be the same. And some people would say, yeah, those people are nebuch, nidam v'shegoimos. And some people actually like walk behind the Rebbe, so they should think that they're clapping for them also. You know, like, there's actually those people, you could watch it. So those people nebuch, but we could all understand the guy is nebuch sick, right? He just messed up because he doesn't even have, nobody means him. It's like, what are you even getting? But if you understand that you don't really need the noise of people clapping, you need something in their mind, basically, right? Oh wait, so you don't. So I'm showing you that you yourself don't need that. So what you're really looking for is something beyond the clapping. Of course, the clapping might be an expression of that. It might be a way to get it to your emotions immediately or whatever. But it's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is being well regarded, right? Being thought of as someone to be thought of. That's what covet is. And now I say, okay, so what do you think people actually think of, right? Do they really respect the guy that they clap for? Questionable. Maybe they just do it because they think that it pays their bills. So we could do it that way, and then we could maybe even tell you that you should really look for self-regard. Maybe.
Yeah, Havital is this thing that it's an interesting explanation of it. There's like the desire to have magnitude, to have to feel like you impact, like you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just like the word kaved is like weight.
Yeah. No, I think it's
gravitas.
Mm-hmm. So you want to be a shtickle mensch. If you want to be a shtickle mensch, now it's COVID, that's nothing to do with anyone knowing anything about it anymore.
Right.
Not by some trick or by rhetorical trick, by actually understanding what it is that you were looking for. You just didn't understand what you were looking for. Now, usually we have this problem where like, wait, but so for COVID it sort of works, might work, I'm not sure if it actually works, because we say, well, it's not the like immediate sensation. Because if you're looking for the immediate sensation, and if by definition that's what you're looking for, it's not going to work. Because having actual covet, like I say, having a person of honor, being a person of your word, right? That's honor. If you don't break your word, if you say you're going to come 8 o'clock and you actually come, that's covet, by the way. Covet is not this is a big chiddush there. Covet is to come, not saying you have to come when the time says, that's respecting someone else. But respecting yourself is respecting when you said you're come, and you actually show up. So I'm a guy. My word reflects on me, I reflect on it, we've got something to do going on. Most people think that COVID is coming whenever you want, whenever the hell I want. I show up and everyone has to wait for me, right? I don't know what that is, but it's not COVID. So I could sort of show, but if you were actually just looking for that like feeling where when you walk in and everyone turns their head, I'm not clear that I could actually solve the problem. It's easier because COVID, it's easier to show you that you're not actually looking for that sensation. But if you like have this like philosophy that says, no, but I'm just looking for the sensation, I'm not sure if there's a way to fix you. I'm wondering.
Why is it easier to apply in certain
too?
Because COVID is a spiritual.
It plays with Simcha too. People have a very hard time understanding.
Well, Simcha is also. That's
yeah,
why
very hard
easy.
time saying why you shouldn't just do drugs and make you happy all day. People can't have no way to say it because
right, but we have
they agree with the premise that you should only look for the sensation. So they're like, yeah.
But so what I would think is that this is not right. So now we do the same thing by Simcha or by what is looking pleasure, joy, happiness. What we're looking for is that we say something similar. That when you're looking for the sensation. This sensation of simcha is really a sort of understanding that this situation is good. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. That's what the sensation is. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Even by, I think that it can be done even for literal physical sensations. I did this Thursday night, and some people were committed, some not. But I think it can be done even for like things feeling sweet, almost.
And what do you mean?
It can be done even for tasting food.
What?
We talked about this last time, right? You could teach someone to like a certain smell, right? We did this. So you could actually be taught to like. I thought they were gonna. I think we could teach people to have actual physical sensations and that they're confused. But that's okay. But let's drop that part. Now let's drop that the fact of physical sensation being teachable. The main question is that if it's teachable, right?
Goes back to our bug shot. People look at bugs and they see more. They're taught, they teach themselves to see more. They really do. They genuinely do. They see more than I can see.
And then they're not allowed to eat it because if you see it.
But it's not initially foul-smelling one, so it's not going to help.
No, so the shaila is how to. So the Aristotle. This is at least. So let's just say what it is. The Aristotle's framing is that everyone agrees. Everyone. In other words, even the hedonists, right? Even the people that actually, and by the way, this hedonism is ancient shit. Right? This is Epicurus' theory is that you should look for the immediate sensation, and maybe Buddha's theory. Like there were ancient people that had this theory. It's not. I don't know. They didn't believe in Al-Mawt, but how do you know that that's what they know?
They seem to have gone there.
Could be. It makes sense. I don't know. Could be.
It seems not trying to say just like.
Okay.
Like as a shita.
The point is that Aristotle does something very interesting, where he doesn't take their shita as being, and I think that they agree with this. He doesn't take this shita like we could have hedonist shita. We could have someone that says, like Aristotle says, like, well, there's three ways you could be happy. Either you could be happy, you could have a fulfilled life, you could have the being a philosopher basically, or you could have pleasure, or you could have power. Those are mainly the three things that he discusses in the ethics. You could be a politician, you could do politics. And all of these people agree that what they're looking for is a fourth thing, which is the true, which is happiness. This is really the interesting thing.
They just limit the definition to their.
In other words, in his telling, the hedonist is just a guy that says that happiness is having always a state of pleasure. And by the way, this is important because this makes a difference. And I think that they agree with this. I don't think this is like twisting them into his system, because. For example, for Epicurus, that's why for Epicurus, you have to have certain kinds of pleasures. He's really looking for ataraxia. He's really looking for calm. He's not really looking for pleasure, because his theory of sensation leads him to think that pleasure is just the not having pain. So you turn out to be one like a very calm, nothing happening life, an unactive life. He's against politics. He's against anything happening ever. You just go to your garden. It's a retreat. No, really, this is why Epicurus is not a hedonist, not a simple hedonist. There were people that were simple hedonists. They have words for that in philosophy, I forgot. But he's an hedonist, but he's in the sense that he thinks that pleasure is the good. But the kind of pleasure that you can get in that way, in that lasting way, is a very weird kind of pleasure. It's very philosophical.
He's sort of mushing the categories and pretending them to be.
Is it like a stoic kind of happiness that's non-contingent on circumstance, like that kind?
Yeah, but the Stoics are not like this. The Stoics are actually for eudaimonia itself, for like in Aristotle. They're not for pleasure. They're not linked for pleasure. They're not linked for pleasure. Possibly, but for a different reason. It's for a different reason. Okay. Different. It's not the same thing. It's different.
Because they're also applying it towards a higher.
Because they think that virtue is what Aristotle, and they think like Socrates and Aristotle. That virtue is what gives you pleasure. Aristotle, the whole machlokes Epicurus and them is that if virtue is the thing that gives you happiness, and they think no, happiness is the thing that gives you happiness. In other words, pleasure. In other words, not having pain, because that's the only sensation of pleasure that actually exists according to Epicurus' analysis of human feelings.
So let's say the taste of sweetness is the absence of the pain of not sweetness?
Yeah, something like that. Or I would say something like when your feet breaks, then it hurts. But when it doesn't break, that's what not hurting is. That's what pleasure is. It's a very schwache theory of pleasure. Like it's not very hedonistic.
It's only neutral and downwards, basically.
Yeah, he's looking for something very neutral. He's looking for freedom. That's what it's true. He's looking for freedom, which is another thing that everyone in Greece is looking for. And therefore his whole thing is not very exciting. Like his whole uchel v'shusik mochanomis doesn't mean eating a lot, because if you eat too much, even if you enjoy it at the moment, then it hurts your stomach. So it means basically eating pasma menachtecha. He ends up being a sort of an ascetic. No, seriously, for hedonistic purposes.
Asceticism in the pursuit of pleasure.
Yeah, and the pursuit of calm, really, like pleasure. His analysis of pleasure.
Bliss.
Okay, but the point is that, so this is why it's important to notice this. No, I'm saying this because you realize that his Aristotle's machlokes with him is not really at this level. It's really what the happiness is. So, in other words, there's happiness that everyone agrees should get. Shal is just what this consists of. So one guy says it's pleasure, another guy says it's money, another guy says it's kavod, another guy says it's virtue, which he just claims to be just happiness itself. But it's important to notice this, that this is the real chiddush, that virtue is what gives you happiness, and it gives it to you because by analyzing the definition of happiness, this is where you get to. You notice that virtue is what everyone is really looking for. This is the way in which Aristotle thinks that he is menatzech everyone, because everyone agrees with his thing. They just identify that thing with sort of some other thing, which actually doesn't give you happiness. He gives you something else, which they just call the happiness, and he gives all kinds of arguments for why pleasure can't be happiness, and why power can't be happiness, and so on.
Also, his pshat explains all the pshat. That's also part of it, right?
No, everyone agrees with this. They all agree with this, and probably in reality they don't really look for his happiness. I think that's why it's not clear. In other words, we could even call this Olam Haba if you want. They're not actually looking for the kind of happiness that he is looking for, because it turns out he has a different kind of happiness in the end. But at least in words, they all agree that we're looking for happiness beyond that. We just say this is the happiness. This is a tricky thing. This is where I'm.
Did they say that this reaches beyond itself? No, they're not even.
No, it doesn't, because that's what happiness is. Everyone, we're looking for happiness. Tell us, what is happiness? Is happiness pleasure? Then we should look for pleasure. Is happiness happiness? Then we should look for happiness. That's Aristotle shit. But happiness means virtue. This is actually not the word. It's virtue, right?
And that's what the point is, happiness.
Yeah, the virtue fulfills everyone else's requirement better than their own shita. Because you say we're looking for happiness, then you end up not finding it, according to Aristotle's Mahalach. But he's looking for happiness and he's actually finding it. That's the whole chilek. Very important to realize. In other words, none of these people
criteria and exceed it.
Yeah.
But his also fulfill all the lower levels too.
So he has worse things to say about all those levels. He just doesn't think that they're happiness.
So, but I would imagine he would.
Pleasure is a thing. I'm not against pleasure.
And he would have Epicurus' pleasure too.
Probably.
Or he'd have what Epicurus assumed pleasure would give him.
At least if everyone else is also doing the same thing, if everything was working correctly.
Probably, and probably even more than that. Probably even more than that, he would not have to do the weird compromise that Epicurus has to do in pleasure in order to make his pleasure equal happiness.
What, to deny that?
It doesn't have to be that moderate.
To deny that existing positively.
Yeah, for example, you could actually have pleasure. And according to Epicurus, you don't actually have pleasure. Because of starting with pleasure, he ends up not having pleasure. I don't know if he actually says this something right now. And it's the same for other shittas. You end up having less of those things in some ways. Yeah. So this is the important thing. So everyone is looking for happiness. Shal is just what happiness is. This is the interesting thing. Why is this interesting? One, because this helps us do this kind of move that we're trying to look for a way to do, right? We're trying to look for a way to do where talk to this guy that sort of is talking about the sensation of happiness and say that what you are yourself looking for is not that, right? And the official way to do this, the old-fashioned way to do this, is to decenter the experience of happiness. So Aristotle had an easier job than us to do this, because to him, all these people that were searching for sensations were not actually searching for sensations. They didn't just start and finish there. They had a lot of focus on that because they thought that was the most real thing to be found. But ultimately, they all agreed to be looking for eudaimonia, not for pleasure, for all these things. Yeah, so it turns out that we have a bigger problem, sort of. If you don't have that, then I sort of have to convince you that you have that. So we need to in other words, what we really need to do is something that doesn't say in the ethics. We really need to prove that everyone is looking for the eudaimonia. And that's a whole different thing. And not only that, we also need to prove that this is the better way of thinking about ethics than the Frum way or the Kantian way. Right?
That's a much taller task.
No, these are both connected, of course.
To me, it seems obvious.
In what sense?
It's true.
Oh, meaning if Epicurus disagrees with Aristotle's idea that this satisfies his criteria.
Right, he would win. If Epicurus and Aristotle meet and Aristotle says, you're looking for simcha, if I have a better way of looking for simcha, then he wins. But if he meets a modern guy and says, I'm not looking for simcha, I'm just looking for pleasurable sensations. That's where it starts, that's where it ends. Then you're sort of stuck. Then you can't get anywhere.
They themselves say they're looking for self-actualization, which
Who says that?
Of course we are.
Nobody says that. Only the really from people, like the messed up people that don't know what they're talking about.
And people say this kind of thing.
Self-actualization is literally Aristotle.
Exactly. They just have different idea what self-actualization is. To them, it means some sort of every single whim I have maybe somehow needs to be fulfilled, whatever. But and the world has to.
So that's a machlokas of what the self is.
And I'm just saying they're admitting themselves that they agree to Aristotle, right? Right. Exactly. In that sense, they are. I
It's true. It's true that most people don't actually intuitively think like a Epicurus. Epicurus is actually a big chiddush, because most people do think of something beyond like the wireheading experiment tries to show, right?
The wire what?
The wirehead thing.
Oh, that it introduces electrode.
Most normal people, not like philosophers and of them, I don't know. But most normal people, if you propose them some kind of helmet or a drug that's just going to keep you always perfectly happy, they won't take it. Because they seem to think that, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that makes me happy. Maybe I'm looking to do something that gets me to that state. I'm not looking to jump to that state directly.
They had some experiments with putting electrodes into the mind. There's a whole book on it.
You can actually take drugs that basically do that, and most people agree that that's bad. It's a bad way to live your life.
No language to explain.
It's not clear why, right?
They have no language.
Why is it bad?
They don't have language to explain why.
We just know that it's bad, and we just say, okay, this one is not so bad, and just fine. So everyone should do it now.
Right, but I wonder, are there any alternatives other than the Aristotelian one, let's say, that explain this disconnect between like why people wouldn't want to do this, or is
why?
Like people like we were saying, they don't choose the helmet, right?
Yeah.
They don't, and we're saying because they're looking for a thing that will provide them with something.
Yeah. So, for example, the transience of these sensations is a really serious problem. Because anyone that tries to hold them notices that they don't hold.
It's not just transient. Doesn't mean in the moment. Like as you said, like kids.
Transient
like
also in the sense that you don't even want it.
Past them. Like that's what happens.
But
usually.
It's not even like.
Well, officially. I mean, in reality. Not officially.
Everyone looks down at the adult who's still in a club. They have to look down at them like, what are you still doing?
But we sort of think that that's. We call this selling out and becoming boring.
Yeah,
and all these
I'm not
things.
saying there is no language to say that it's a bad thing. But it's in reality, people's intuition is you're pathetic, right? That's what they think of that guy. And they say, hey, I never sold out, but they don't think they're pathetic when they sold out. They don't.
What about Henry Thoreau? Is he a teenager just?
Thoreau? Whatever.
The Walden, no?
Here. I know he is, yeah. He was
Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau, I don't know how you say his name.
It's like 19th century, right?
Walden. You people.
Yeah, I know this book. I know what it is.
But kids, all these people that are looking to live authentically and whatever, past the age of 17. What about him?
People look down at those people.
When they actually do, they look down. But like the culture has this thing like he's a tzaddik.
Yeah, we pretend. We like when old people are very hip, but then in real life, you don't want them to be your grandfather, right? That's the point, right? Not to say, the Shlomo Kabach seems a little bit pathetic at the end of his life. He seems a very sad person at the end of his life. Just doesn't seem to be actual, right? And they put on his grave certain things that he said. It's just like, it just rings very hollow. It's like, it doesn't seem like you actually have anything out of that.
Someone told me that it was Alta Bocha. That's the whole story. It's about the person that you know that mentioned.
Yeah.
That's what you said?
His mother was very much.
Very?
His mother was too picky and shidduchim, and then.
That's the Shoydish of Kalabayot.
Yes, he said. Well, there's two, whatever.
I missed the beginning of this.
The kid said. So I wonder Taka about this, but this okay. But maybe we just look.
So
you're saying that everyone agrees.
It hits me the whole day. I don't think anyone disagrees with this. I don't think one person agrees with everything you just said. They'll say they do. I don't think anyone disagrees with anything you just said. I've yet to meet a person, an adult or whatever.
Okay, but if they agree, then it's good.
They end up even the most the heads. You would say the leaders of certain type of culture end up in universities giving classes and doing things that are beyond that. They preaching it, but that's what they're not doing it. They're preaching it. That's the point, right? They're preaching.
Older Shivas seem to think that the Shleimus is to be a bacha that just learns, like whatever.
Exactly. But they're a Shiva. They're not a bacha who just learns, right? That's the point, right?
But they don't seem to know how to be a Shiva. They just know how to talk about the bacha that just learns.
But they don't want to be that because they could come to BMG and sit and just learn, right? They could.
I don't think they could. They think that they could. They actually can't.
Exactly, but that's my point. But they don't. They are admitting with their actions that they don't think that's the end result of life, right? While you're the professor telling everyone that they should go to the club, why
maybe like the Chazon Ish is that.
What?
I don't know. There's all these people that basically doing just that.
Doing what?
Chaim Kanievsky.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
He's just the boy that just keeps on staying in the candy store for his whole life, right?
Yeah. But it's actually people a little more impressed by it. That's why they're not disgusted by it.
Why are they impressed by it?
Because maybe it's a little, it's more substantial than candy, you'd say. It's knowledge, at some level of knowledge people like. That's it, it's a lot to do with knowledge. People do like that. Right, let's say a guy learned,
but I'm not,
learning like a bacher and learning like an adult, basically. That's the difference.
So let me try.
Like a bacher the rest of his life, but there are people in Lakewood who do this, who don't learn a lot of, like they actually have very little information in their heads. No, I don't think
so Chaim is only interesting because he actually learned things beyond the Nashim and Nazikin.
If you just learn Nashim, people like, he's so hard to not mean it. I don't think they actually mean it.
Whatever, okay, let's not talk about him. The point is, maybe we, so,
Yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with you.
Nobody disagrees with me?
No. Of course they'll say that.
I need to call someone that disagrees, that disagree, and we'll see. So according to you, we're just looking for language to talk about this. 100%, that's a big bayah. Because, no, let's say where they definitely, the people that you're talking about definitely disagree. Not the from people, because they know what we have to do. But everyone else, well, I say they know. Everyone else will tell you, okay, let's say we agree that there is, there's a very hard way to do it. It's actually hard to talk about this. Like we say something like, people have this concept too of the higher pleasures and concepts of like more adult pleasures, and maybe people have weird theories of why this would be even interesting.
When I was in yeshiva, I was told an example like
higher pleasures is a scam. They pretend
when you're younger.
No, it's a different thing then.
What I want to get to is that's the correct version of the same thing.
Well, we had this.
So that's important. This is important. Because what I want to say is not that it's a different thing and you're just dumb. It's similar to the candy and it's actually a very good analogy, the candy and the beer or whatever it is that adults enjoy. So, because beer is actually better than candy. How do I know? It's really better. Like it like has more to it.
That it involves
has more goodness in it.
There's
third level of good. It doesn't have like metaphysical goodness, but like whatever.
Yitzchok has this thing that these pleasures that we like. Let's say in Scotch, right? Well, people don't pay $1,000 for sour sticks, but
no, he thinks that we like it because we hate it. So that's different shit.
Not because we not
that's
that we
like it. Like we like it because it hurts. Okay, I don't
know. No, it's not like that. That's not how I understood it. Maybe I understood it incorrectly.
I know. I'm just saying.
At least what I understood was that he's saying that it requires a certain level of participation in the enjoyment. That the enjoyment doesn't impose itself on you immediately, but you actually have to be and
why is that? And why is that interesting?
It's less.
This is right. This is the kind of pleasure that I can actually. Maybe inflict upon myself. I don't know.
So this is the important thing. So it seems like what I want to do is I want to tell you that it's the same thing. In other words, you're looking for the same thing. In other words, let's say there's some kind of good. Let's say we call it like the good for the animal nutritive soul to eat or whatever. And children are supposed to do it with candy. Nothing wrong with that even. It's not because they don't understand. They do understand. Because that's exactly what's good for children. Candies are good for children. Assuming that they are, okay? If they're not, then let's assume that they are, okay?
Maybe beer is better at getting the sensation.
Beer is not good for children, by the way.
Better at getting the sensation of happiness.
It's not good. Not only they don't understand, it's not actually good. You see, this what I'm saying. It's not actually good for them. And they don't know what to do with it, or that's what might be one way to say it. Like they don't have the kli to receive it, or like something like that.
Maybe it doesn't make them happy.
It's not good. Happy, again, you have to change the word happy.
Sensation, I'm talking even sensation of happy. Maybe it doesn't do that for them.
It might. I don't even think that's true.
It seems like...
See, we have to get back to the sensation. I don't know if that's true. I'm pretty sure that you could teach kids to be alcoholics. Just give it them 3 times and they become alcoholics. It's not like mad hard. At least from a certain age. I don't know, we give kids by their bris alcohol. It seems to work.
Constant damage.
Honestly, the honest truth is that you could get kids hooked on any drug.
With sensations,
and whatever. Don't do the experiment, but it's possible. I don't think it's not a real thing.
Their baseline is less affected maybe by it. Like kids are happier beings in the way beer makes you happy, they may be more natural than that.
Okay, but the like abstract point that I'm trying to make is that there is one thing called good food for you, which candies being good for children is an instance. And candies are also good for adults in that way, but not as fully, right? And if you're an adult that only likes candies, we say that there's something wrong with you. I don't even know if with you or like with your system of food. They say, well, this is just people actually say this. I'd use this example. Like, no, beer is just a scam. It actually tastes bitter. No, you're a scam. Well, the way to do it is to drink it 3 times and spit it out until you like it. But that's just how we learn. That's not trickery or anything. and it's just better. But down the thing that so it's better for the same by the value, by the goal that the child is looking for. It's better. You understand? And it's better in such a way. Now here we get into something complicated.
The point where the capacity exceeds, and then to be
here we get into something complicated where it's better in such a way where it's better for a greater person that it's getting it. In other words, it's not actually, like I said, it's not actually good for the child.
Meaning good virtues are not good for bad people?
Exactly. It's only good in the way that it makes you into the kind of person for who it's good. And then we get into this whole sort of loop where it becomes very hard to teach. And that's what's her name's book on aspiration is talking about this loop. It's a big problem in virtue ethics. Agnes Collard, who was famous on the internet last week, has a good book about aspiration that talks about this problem, where wanting to become better is very hard if you're an Aristotelian. Yeah, if you're an Aristotelian, because it means wanting to be someone else than what you are. And like, who is the guy wanting? This is some kind of bayah here. But I think the answer would be that it's at least basically the same thing than what you're looking for. Okay, so let's go back to where we are. So, what do I want to do here?
I don't know, I'm very curious about it.
Okay.
Agnes Collard.
Yeah, okay. Soon you're going to all keep up with all the Twitters that I keep up, and you'll know everything before me, Anshine.
That's not that hard.
So, but wait, this is not, so wait, I have to go back to where I am.
I think that's the podcast from her. I think it
Possibly. Has a podcast with, whatever. Gets it, Nachle Naini is that she was on Zor Atkins' podcast once, if you know that guy.
Maybe that's right.
Is mysticism something? What's it called?
What?
Zor Atkins
probably where I listened to it.
Is Kabbalah.
She became religious later
I
on
don't
in her
know.
life? She became religious later on in her life, maybe?
She's not religious. No, that's someone else. You're talking about a different lady. Okay, gets it. Let's get back to the life. You're talking about someone else. I know who you're talking about. But let's go back to where we are, because we're going to talk about all the gossip after the sheet. I have to go back to, so I have to have these like 3 levels where there's like something that you're really looking for, and something that you think it is, and something that it really is. And without these 3 levels, I think it doesn't work. And you see that everyone has it, so then I'm fine. I think that some people don't have it. But maybe there's a different problem.
I'm very optimistic.
Maybe there's a different problem. No, I understand what you're saying, but maybe there's a different problem. Maybe the problem is, so we sort of have to prove that, or maybe the problem is that...
The fact that people, let's say, display dissonance in the idea of the helmet doesn't necessarily mean that they just don't want it because of maybe something that's less articulated. Or that would be what you're saying.
I'm saying it's transient.
No, his proof would be that they don't want it because they don't want it. And they don't have a way to say that they don't want it, so they have to look for excuses.
It's transient in life.
But unless it's a more basic response that isn't included in a want, but it's just like an immediate recoil at the idea that's not necessarily rooted in anything.
You could say all kind of things. They don't want it because their mother would be mad. Whatever. That's not a good answer.
I don't think that's the legitimate.
I'm not saying that it's the...
I think it's the opposite. The culture, he's saying that's the opposite. The culture seems to want you to say yes. And you say African no for no good reason.
Right.
That proves that you want something else.
That you're really Aristotelian. That all people desire, all things desire their good.
The 2 steers are so overwhelming. This one wins. It wins every time.
I'm sure that if you go into the correct place, it loses. Like, you have to remember.
That's the point. You have to look for that place, right? I don't have to look.
Go to French Quarter in New Orleans and see people that would take the helmet.
And when there's a guy, and they all look down at the 50-year-old doing it. That's the point. And they are 50-year-olds, and they're and if. Right, or it's all 50-year-olds who meet up there, so no one else should look down at them. And the 30-year-olds are just wherever they.
Okay, so I think that the other real so if we agree with this, then we have the third meaning of happiness, which means just what time is it? When did I start this thing? Which means just what is good for a person, because that's what it's all about. And now we're talking about something totally objective, because nobody cares what you feel about it anymore. It might hurt your whole life, and it still be a happy life. Right? That's the whole idea of religion, like where your life could suck and you could have a happy life. This is the way you could say it. This is why it's very important to say it this way, not in the way that most from people say it, where your life could suck and something, and it doesn't matter because God loves you. I don't know. No, and you'll be happy. So that you have to say it in the way that it's a contradiction, because otherwise you don't have what I'm saying. Yeah. And it's good for you, not good for you, and it's good.
Also, it shouldn't suck.
Oh, okay. So wait. Let's get to that step. Then we have to talk about 2 things. Yeah, I want to talk about 2 things. One is, so how would it actually be pleasurable? And secondly, why is there a problem? So let's talk about the problem first, and then just for a minute. I think the main thing that people disagree with here, and I think this is what people would say, is that there isn't any one thing that is good for any. In other words, there's no such a thing as a human being. Like Foucault said, if there's no such a thing as a human being, then there can't be something that's good or bad for it, right? You could be a good or bad tree because everyone agrees that there are trees. At least as long as this like mutation of evolution will continue, everyone knows what's good and bad for the environment. It's weird that the same Picards don't believe in humans, but they believe in the environment. You know why? Because it's more objective. Like everyone knows that it's good for trees to stay trees and for the ocean to stay the ocean and so on, right? Just for the ocean, not for us, because we're just the bad guys that are ruining it, right? So it's not good for us. It's good for the environment itself, right? For the goddess Gaia, you know. No, it's true. There's such a goddess. Like, why are you laughing?
Yeah, of the
form of the environment or of the earth, let's call it. Okay, actually the matter, but whatever, because Earth is matter.
Sky was what, the aura or
yeah, Uranus. Okay, but the environment is not talking about Gaia. She was the first god. According to some shittas, the first god ever to exist was Gaia.
But Amun-Ra was not Amun-Ra.
You're confusing your mythologies. Okay. Those were the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods. We're talking about the Greek gods. We only believe in the Greek gods nowadays.
Saying that Sekhmet.
Yeah, I've heard the same things.
Before, right?
The same. Well, historically?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the history of the universe. First was Gaia and she gave birth to the sky. There's machlokas. Shemaim nifet tchila, earth nifet tchila. But according to the Hantike shit, it's first this. Okay, so, yeah, the same machlokas. Why are you laughing at me?
Shemaim nifet tchila is, gracious brother comes to shine his eyes and
read this year.
Okay.
So exactly. So the real truth is they're both together, but that's a whole different thing. Point that's Aristotle. No, the conclusion. There's the third shit. It's in Medrash. It's also in the Gemara, I think. Yeah, but the third shit is Aristotle, that the form and this matter can be separated. So that both happen the same moment. That's the whole machlokes. Oh, that's one pshat in this machlokes.
I didn't know that the Maskana is the Aristotelian.
Of course. Okay, that's at least one reading.
The Gemara in Sanhedrin is also Aristotelian, where
yeah, of course. The Ptagon quotes it like this. We discussed. Okay, yeah. Okay, but at least, yeah, it's closest to that middle. Like, what I'm saying is that if there's no such thing as a human being, then people would say, okay, I agree with you that we need self-actualization, but what kind of thing is that? So if someone wants to be a fireman, that's the same thing as him wanting to be, that's just as valuable. If someone wants to be a scholar, and another guy wanting to be a hedonist, right? So at least for the hedonist, we should be, and the fireman and the scholar are both needed functions in society. So the scholar are more important than the fireman, but they're both important, right? So that's not such a real problem. But for the hedonist, at least, we have to try to answer that, and we have to sort of try to show that you can't do that. Aristotle for sure thinks that there is such a thing as human nature, such a thing as human perfection, and there's no reason to believe otherwise. Like, believing otherwise would be very weird according to him. Again, if you believe there's no nature to anything, then yeah, there's nothing is nothing. But if there's anywhere, then of course humans also. That's the basic. He just assumes this also. It's not like something that he's very interested in proving. Only for nature in general, in physics, like that nature exists. Nowadays, most people don't believe that nature exists. Nicht in physics and nicht in humans. So therefore, it becomes a problem. It becomes even a double problem if you do like this Kantian move, where like, well, might be no nature in nature, but there's definitely a nature for humans. That's even weirder thing to do, and then you have to like impose ethics on the world. And humans are the only thing that have a good. And there's no good reason to do that. That's why you need metaphysics for this to work. I think that's true. I think there must be a way. I think the way to do this would to prove that, like, the same thing for nature as for ethics, that most people believe that there's such a thing as a tree. And at least we live in that world. Maybe in some other level there isn't, but we definitely live in the world where there's such a thing as trees, and there's such a thing as humans. And therefore there's such a thing as a good human life and a bad human life. Not in the sense because, like, it's ethically good, because it's a good kind of human life. And therefore, just liking pleasure is not a good kind of human life. And
well, I would argue everyone thinks so.
How do we know that it's not good?
I would argue everyone thinks it's a human too.
So
they might not admit it, but they don't think so, right? That's why people work against.
Well, we believe in human dignity. I understand. Yeah, I know. Nobody knows why. Okay.
They just have it.
I know. That's a different baya. It's like a stira, but we discussed this already once. I think there's a problem. It's not really clear. So, but I don't want to talk about that right now. But I don't know how to. We have to show this. At least it's true. But I think this is at least true that if there's no like real thing as such called a human, then you can't be a humanist. Famously, you have to be like an existentialist, where humanism just means being whatever kind of human you want, which literally means whichever kind of being you want, right? Because most of the thing is a kind of human. You could be a cat if you want. Just go on and be a cat. Yeah.
Attack helicopter.
Go on and be a cat. No, but this is Sartre. Like you see, this is a good example of what I said in the beginning. There is nothing weird about being an attack helicopter. I mean, it's just the logical.
The reason why it's a meme.
Yeah, because it shows absurdity.
Consequence of the original
it's the exact consequence of this statement that says existence precedes essence, right? The slogan of the existentialist. This is literally what it leads to. And logically leads to. It doesn't have to lead to because you don't have to be crazy. But that's like, where does this crazy come from? Crazy is defined by what makes sense. And what makes sense? And it makes sense to be whatever you want. And you might as well be whatever you want. I think that we have to figure out a way, the easy way to say is, well, it leads to bad outcomes, you end up being sad, things like that. You might be able to do that. I don't know if that's a good answer.
I don't think the people that are arguing against it, the funny thing is that they argue by resorting to the fact that there's a bad outcome, even though they want to want to make an argument that's much more direct to the, let's say, what they call the absurdity of the claim, even though they can only, them being modern themselves.
Right. What's wrong? Exactly. What's wrong with being an attack helicopter?
Right.
I mean,
so
it's wrong. It's basically wrong.
Right?
No, it's wrong because it's not true.
Right, but I'm saying is that
because you're not that.
But the contemporary,
you're very obviously not that. But you're not as obvious that you're not a cat. And why? But it's true because you have some catness in you. I mean, everyone is some little bit of cat.
Right, but I'm saying is that most of the contemporary criticism.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're not.
Strange in the sense that
I think
proof to you that your propellers.
Even they're going to. I mean, it's not even they couldn't doubt
They agree with the premise and then they argue that's one manifestation of it. Like, what do you? It's not.
Yeah.
This is not the point of departure that we're looking for.
You lost before you said anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that it's exactly. And just to be clear, there might be justifications for all these crazinesses, for all these things without having a modern metaphysics. You don't need. I'm just saying that this is the obvious, silly outcome of that. You could just say that it is good to be that and finished, and figure out why that is at least a human good. If you don't think there's such a thing as a human good, then obviously there's no way to do it badly.
You can make an Aristotelian anti-slavery argument that doesn't suffer the same.
No, there are. I mean, Aristotle's against slavery.
Right, I'm saying, but you don't get the same.
Not really. Halfway.
Right, you don't have the same continuation that you have in
exactly.
other ways,
Exactly. We have to make these arguments differently.
Right.
Okay. The point is. So if there is no such a thing, then it's hard to say this. It seems Aristotle's basic way of arguing that such a thing is the famous function argument, where humans are for the things that humans are, and it seems like humans are most specifically rational, which means that being rational is what you should be. This is not like an argument from God's will; it's an argument from what the kind of thing you are. Is that like a conclusive argument? I don't know. Yeah, it is an auto, the same thing with Aristotle. The whole kasha doesn't begin. But at least probably makes sense if we go back to talk from to argue from contentment and actual happiness. It probably makes sense that people, and I think this is an intuition that everyone nowadays agrees with, that people are happy as being what they are. It's just that people don't know what they are. But I think everyone agrees that being what you are, in other words, fulfilling your potential, which is the exact language that everyone loves, that Aristotle made up, is what happiness is. Actualizing your potential. Now the question is what that potential is. Potential is actually the reason why Aristotle actually also leads to all this craziness is because potential literally means you could be whatever you want. And Aristotle explicitly says, or at least the Rambam quotes him as saying, I think even radically than it says, that there is not really such a thing as a humankind in the sense of the human minds or human virtues, because there's more differences between humans than there is between members of any species, and even between different species of animals, just in their temperament and in their actions and so on. And this is why it's actually possible for a human to choose to be a cat. It's not possible for a cat, because cats don't have that much potential. Cats are only potentially cats,
you can argue
not really anything else. Humans are actually potentially cats, and that's why some humans are actually cats, or whatever, identify as cats. And then the only thing Aristotle would really have to argue against this is that it's not completely human, because then you're sort of only half of your potential. And the full potential to be a cat and a lion and all these things, and all in the correct measure, which is basically a human. This is like a sort of argument. I have to think about this, but I think that's where the problem is.
But I mean, the potentiality is somewhat limited to the available outcomes that this potentiality has.
Everyone agrees that it's limited. I don't say it's unlimited.
Right,
but
right.
humans,
So let's say my potential to be
the human potential is very great, especially the human mind potential, because literally Aristotle says the mind is all things. It's potentially all things, which means that you could think you're a cat. And this is why, you see, according to Aristotle, a lot of these things make even more sense than according to the modern way of thinking. According to modern thinking, nothing is real, so you might as well pretend whatever you want. But according to Aristotle, the mind can think, when it thinks something, it is identical with that thing, because it has the same form of that. Which means that when you act like a cat, you actually are a cat.
They also make it modern day way of thinking is also that if you want to be that, then it's very important that you should be that. It's not just like you could be that. Right?
I'm not sure. That's weird. It's a big machlokes. There seems to be a serious machlokes. There seems to be a big machlokes. Is there like a ought? I'm not sure. It's very tzurichian. Because what if I just don't want? What if I don't want to? If I feel identified this way, I just don't want to act that way. Am I a bad person?
Right. And it must be someone.
Am I a sinner?
Well, in this sense, you're just in denial. You're in chains.
Right. Someone else made you not want something.
What if I want to be in chains?
They'll say the same way you'll say that this person is a sick person.
That's also the chains and
No, I don't think so. I think that the real thing. No, I'm not asking. I'm not asking. I think that I don't think really that's what happens. I think that the belief is that we don't force anyone anything. Therefore, it's not important. If you choose to stay in denial, you're allowed to. It's just very important not to let everyone else do whatever they want. This has to do with the whole, because they don't know how to be selfish.
People don't seem to be as satisfied with that answer. If you say, yeah, like I identify as a sheep, but like I'm just choosing to be human anyway, I think I'd imagine a certain dissatisfaction. I mean, at least from the people that
because they would assume that you're not being happy and they want you to be happy, like altruism.
Okay, but this is
no, but
there's no avoidance.
I think the reason why they're saying you're chained, why they're saying you're chained, the same way as you would say someone who doesn't want to be a good human.
Because they assume that you're suffering.
The same way Aristotle would say that you don't want to be a good human is the reason why you don't want to do it because you're sick, because there's something off about you.
Okay, this is an old seed. I don't know the teretz. I don't know that this is consistent. No, people don't have to be consistent. I'm not doing politics. I want to do philosophy. I think that there is a real consistent theory that says again the existentialist theory is this. This is not whatever the New York Times believes. They don't believe anything. The existentialist theory, the real existentialist freedom theory, the Sartre theory, is that you can be whatever you want. He also thinks there's an obligation to do that somehow. I don't know why, but the obligation is to choose. It's not to become. There's nothing given, which means nobody is born in a different body or anything, because nobody is born anything, right? You're just made whatever you want by social and your own choice, which means that you could actually choose to be a cat, and you'll be a cat, and you could choose to everything, and nobody can force you, because that's the whole thing of being radically free. If you read Sartre, for example, and yeah, that's his opinion. And I think that the only ethics that there could be is not letting anyone else, is not denying anyone else the possibility to do whatever they want. So there's no real ethics for the person himself, because there can't be such an ethics. So the ethics is free, is choosing. Okay, this is Sartre's theory. So if you're just choosing, then you can't. There's nothing in accordance with which you have to choose. That's the whole vart. If there's nothing in accordance with which you have to choose, then it doesn't make sense what you're saying. It starts and ends with your choice.
Right.
At least
here's my question,
I'm just following Sartre's theory.
Approach this. Let's say I want to be a furry Aristotelian, right? Don't I first have to at least understand, let's say, this table is not potentially a rock, right?
Yeah, but you are potentially a cat.
Am I potentially the fourth sphere?
Maybe. I'm not sure. At least in the sense of your mind, yes. You potentially got to.
Okay, that's
No, that's why I'm saying. That's why according to Aristotle it's actually more scary. You would just think it's pretending. Aristotle says no, you really are. Which means that when you die, you're gonna go to the heaven of cats, which doesn't really exist. The only way you're gonna go to the real heaven, according to the Al-Farabi, is by being a human. But if you don't want to be a human, no problem. You could be a cat, and you'll actually be a cat. Because you'll act like a cat, and you'll have the mind, the kind of opinions that cats have, and the kind of knowledge that cats have, or whatever. Know all about cats. And then you'll just be a cat.
See, this could be untrue, meaning I can think myself to be a rock, and I will be a rock.
You will be a rock. You will be a rock. The mind is everything. The mind is potentially everything. You will be a rock. Okay, this is just crazy stuff that I'm saying. But I'm just saying, I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm just saying this, so you shouldn't think that being an Aristotelian solves everything. It makes things worse.
No, I'm not necessarily here to I don't know.
You're actually a rock. If you only think about rocks all the time, and act like rak, then you will be a rak.
Dedication.
Your mind. Yeah, all these things require commitment. Like most people are only pretending on the weekends, whatever. But
right, okay.
Besides that, so then you're hacked. If you're always a rak,
than if he's
then you're always going to be a rak. Or for the moment that you're a rak and you're actively a rak, whatever.
Yeah, I just don't like furries that drink beer. You know, you have to eat tuna.
No, then they're pretending because like it's not the shleimest. The thing is not.
I'm far more
pants and eat it by the table.
That's the shadow. No, that turkey that's eating the chap, that turkey is trying to trick to pass this whole problem, and trying to say that there's no essence, but that's not true. And since there is an essence, then the turkey that eats meat is actually still a turkey. Only the mind can change this. Actions don't help. Okay, point nachle nine. So that's the thing. I think I have to finish one thing about pleasure. The thing is like this. So pleasure, the problem with pleasure is that it's not a good signpost for what is the good. Because bad people like bad things. This is the thing that Aristotle says. If you're a bad person, you like bad things. Just like if you're a child, you like stupid things, small things. Bad people actually like bad things. Because pleasure is not the ultimate thing for anyone. Pleasure comes after you think that something is good, then you enjoy that. So if you think a bad person, to some extent, thinks that the bad things are good, right? This is the whole problem with being bad people, according to even Aristotle's not entirely. This is the famous thing. But bad people are people that think that the bad things are good for them. Then they have pleasure in them. So this is why chasing pleasure can lead you very much astray, because if you're a bad person, then you have pleasure in bad things. But if you're a good person, what it means to be a good person is to take pleasure. What it means, but not what it means, but this is just a result of that. Then you will enjoy good things. This is what the Rambam says, that is Dr. Sam Berashem. This is what we discussed. That since your love, if you are a person that thinks, so this is very interesting. People ask, like, is it pleasurable to think? Well, if you think it's good, it's pleasurable. Mm-hmm. If you don't think it's good, then it's torture. In other words, if you're a good person, if you're an intellectual person that actualizes potential for being a thinker, then you love thinking. But if not, then we have to force you to thinking by giving you candies, and then you get into the Hoshladishma, and then you're not really there. Then you need to get on the Mahaba.
They got the right thing. They say Mahaba is just
that's true.
Like, by mistake, they got it right.
Yeah, because if you actually like it, if you're taught to like it, either whichever trick we teach you, if you taught to like it, then you actually enjoy it. And that's why the tzaddikim enjoy their Red Mahaba. Besides for just having the good thing, they also enjoy it. That's why it's very important for them to talk about this pleasure. Because if otherwise you're not a tzaddik, you're just a Bainani, you're just a Mizgabal Yitzre. But Mizgabal Yitzre seems to not go to Red Mahaba, sadly.
How should he go?
I don't know. It's never.
Goes.
As long as you're being kovish, medosav, whatever, you don't go to Red Mahaba. In other words, you might go there, but you won't enjoy it. Because you're going to have to force yourself to be there, which is very sad. You only enjoy it. That's the Litvische thing, where the Olam Haba is just a stender with tea, right? It's mamish that thing. That's very, very Rambamistic of them. Yeah, so it ends up that you actually enjoy life.
I think it's someone who understood the Rambam and Aristotle. I'm sorry, I think
no, it's true. The only problem with that, according to Aristotle, it was a class about this once. The only problem with that, according to the Rambam, is that you're thinking on not eternal things, right. Which is only leads you to like Olam Asiya, whatever. Yeah. Okay, that's the story. Shine.